Hi everyone, it's Rob Watson, the module leader for TECH3022, and this is the overview summary video for the 23rd lecture. So two more to go, this one and next week's. What I want to do this week is to review the kind of key conceptual issues that we've used in the module as a way of getting into the mindset of people who use social media. So I suppose the overall objective of what we've been seeking to achieve really is the idea that we are able to understand, put ourselves into the position of users of social media, users of media in general, and ask how is it that they're making sense of what they're doing, and how is it that they're negotiating a line of action, so something that they can accomplish. So it's, rather than thinking about media as a transaction or a process of encoding or decoding in that kind of traditional linear mass media model, we're really thinking about our use and engagement of media in that spreadable sense that Henry Jenkins calls is as something which is shared between people and which is negotiated between people. So this is reviewing the symbolic interactionist perspective that we've looked at, and just going back over some of the content that we've produced and thinking about it of our work in producing media in our social project in the context of some of the ideas that inform this kind of thinking. So what I want to do is go through some of the kind of key issues, and I suppose one of the most important factors that we really, some models of media find very difficult to, and some social models find very difficult to do, which is to account for social change, and the idea that things move on and things are different and things are interactive, and we want to think about how and what it is that people do and produce and that they create and they generate that brings about social change, and that things don't stay the same, but they're multi-layered and they're multi-perspective. So we need to think about the types of human activity and the types of activity that people engage in the real world, not just theoretically. So the best way to do this is to think about people's social interactions. And we can look at this as the Simon Lindgren talks about, is the idea of kind of cultural flows. And there's different types of flows of media, flows of people and what people do and use media for and to achieve. Then there's kind of the media content itself, if you like, and there's a certain kind of level of flow and recognition about different formats and different types of media. And these change as well as the kind of priorities are readdressed and as the technology changes. And there's the techno flow of media in terms of how the underpinning technologies that are introduced, they also have a knock-on effect in terms of how we think about and understand interaction and communication. Then this has to be paid for, so kind of where does the money go? Well, we're not focusing on that so much in this, but it's an important one that we can see where the flow of finance kind of spreads out, if you like. And then I think really importantly, we need to think about where the ideas flow and how they interconnect and kind of shape and kind of form patterns, if you like. So there's a kind of an ideascape. So all of this needs to be thought about in terms of its context and in terms of the way in which we understand the process of socialised forms of media. And so the symbolic interactionist approach, and why I'm attracted to this as a kind of a standpoint, if you like, for thinking, which is it regards the practices of group life as to be at the centre of this process. And that's based on the notion that we have a kind of intersubjectivity. So we all have our subjective positions, and our ideas are from our unique personal experience, but they're shared and interacted with other people. We have to negotiate those understandings, and those, for something to be meaningful, we need a reciprocal follow back from other people. We can't just work in isolation. We need to be connected with other people in some ways. So the kind of characteristics of symbolic interactionism, it's a kind of down to earth approach. It needs empiricism, it needs observation. It's focused in the community life. It's about the practices that we engage in and what we accomplish in those practices. It's kind of, what keeps us connected is a really good question. And that's the defining question, I think, because in a world where information overload and there's so much available media and texts and symbolic representations, is that actually what keeps us connected in those situations, and how do we make sense of things is incredibly important. So for us as researchers and us as thinkers about this process, we need to be embedded in those flows of media and ideas and people. And it's really not just a case of, if you like, theorising for theorising's sake. What we really want to do is we want to look at the nature of the way that people use these symbolic forms of representation, language, images, different forms of media practice. We want to look at that on the basis that it offers us something practical, some insight that we can use to inform how we engage with our media in different ways and form networks. So the fundamental principle of this is that our understanding of our media and our understanding of our interactions with one another are driven through and by social processes. So there's a kind of process of interpretation, there's a process of social engagement, there's a process then of practical applications of different lines of action, and what we can achieve with things. What difference does it make is always a good question to ask. And then we want to think about how and in what way we can study this. So how are we grounded in the evidence, if you like, that we've gathered, and how is it that we can put ourselves in a position where we understand where people are coming from, so we're co-located, we're embedded in that sense of community, so that we don't just observe from a distance. This is not just about theorizing or observing as if it's kind of we were scientists in a laboratory looking at rats running around a maze, that kind of instrumental kind of view of social change, but rather we are engaged in the process and we join in and we learn to understand what it feels like to look at a social situation from the perspective of those people who are involved. And that's quite a powerful way of shaping your point of view. So we'll look at this in terms of the kind of associations, if you like, that we need to maintain. And there's an application for this. If you think this is kind of rather theoretical, actually this has really broad applications, not just in terms of the media that we produce, but also in terms of the way that we organise our workplace and the way that we organise our businesses. Because traditionally we've been quite a hierarchical society. We've command and control style businesses, or the market. And we'll look at a report which came out a few weeks ago, which is about how local government services are adapting to changing circumstances and becoming more collaborative and more creative in the processes that they use to undertake their work with and provide services in local authorities. So what we're working on is actually quite important in terms of the way that it can be used elsewhere as a different approach, which opens up the social process of media and communication. Right, the notes for this are up and available on the DMU Commons wiki. Just go to wiki.our.dmu.ac.uk. If you want to carry on the conversation, just look for the TECH3022 section. If you want to carry on the conversation, if you want to share any ideas or examples, go over to talk.our.dmu.ac.uk. So I'll see you at the lecture.